Hey there, folks, and welcome to an update on the eruption that began in Iceland yesterday on Wednesday, November 20th. Today is Thursday, November 21st. It is about 9:30 a.m. here in Idaho. That would make it 4:30 or so over in Iceland. Thanks for joining me. I'm Geology Professor Shawn Willsey. This is going to be an update letting you know some of the things that have happened over the last 12 hours or so. I did a live stream last night as the eruption was beginning with viewers, and we were just trying to scramble and find out the information in real time and let people know what was happening. And then I also did a live stream drone flight this morning with Nature Eye. So you can look at those two videos if you'd like to see some footage of the eruption, get some of that information that was happening in real time. But let's go ahead. Now I've got things more organized, and so this can be a lot more streamlined and a much better overview of what's been happening. So the eruption began Thursday evening about 11:14 p.m. local time. It started out in the location that we've seen before. You can see it's still erupting today, but it's more consolidated. The area where the eruption took place is pretty much, this is the old eruption here from August. I'll get a new flow field map out soon once we get a little bit more data in. But the eruption was in between Sillingarfeld and Stora Stokfeld, this area in here, exactly where we've seen all these other eruptions take place in the past. That fissure vent opened up and lengthened to about 3 kilometers or so. And a lot of the lava was pooling both to the east and to the west. And the main flow off to the west has and is still impacting the Blue Lagoon area, which we'll get to here in a bit. So we'll run through a lot of tabs here I have for you, looking at some of the webcams. We did have some of the webcams go down, apparently because some of the power lines were taken out and maybe some of the fiber optic cables. And so, but a lot of them are back online now. So we have that view there of the webcams. Here's a little closer view of that fissure vent. We're starting to build up some of these spatter ramparts and eventually maybe a spatter cone if these eruptions continue for the next few days. Looking at, again, some of the webcams there as we're kind of at twilight time in Iceland. Now, the good news is the lava flow did not impact Grindavik at all. So even though we evacuated people from Grindavik and the Blue Lagoon, people were out of harm's way, which is good. There's no threat right now to the town. And so far, the berms that run around the power plant and the Blue Lagoon are doing a nice job. You can actually see in this view here, that lava flow just beyond the berm there, and no lava has overtopped or inundated this perimeter here. So that's great news. Another view there of the eruption, just various webcams and views that we have looking out across the landscape there. So let's go to the Met Office and their most recent update. There'll probably be another one that comes out soon as well. The one bit of infrastructure we did have impacted was the road here was taken out, but we've seen this before. So, remember in the February eruption, we had lava extend across the roadway. We saw it again in the March eruption. The May eruption, not so much. A little bit of it did, that's right. And then in the August eruption, that was further to the north, so we didn't see that as much. But the same region here, the lava's pretty much followed that same path, more or less parallel to the berms there. And we have seen the road, again, covered by lava. But the Iceland community has done a good job of reestablishing those roadways pretty quickly once the lava's cooled and solidified. So a couple things here with respect to the Met Office update. So the eruption has shrunk. It's died down and dwindled. We reached the peak probably late last night, and it's died down considerably. There is lava that's flowed over. Remember, they buried that hot water pipeline, the one that was impacted with the February eruption. They reburied it, and lava has flowed over that region now. But there appears to be, at least right now, no damage to the hot water pipeline. It's still operating. So we'll hope that that continues moving forward. Let's see. So we've got just the middle of the fissure. The main part is active here, just between the two hills, Stora Stokafeld and Sillingarfeld. Let's go ahead and go to that lava flow map, the flow field map that's out currently. This is already a little bit outdated, and I'll show you why here in a second. But what you can see here in red is the extent of the lava flow field as of early this morning. shown in red. The purple are the older flows from other eruptions. And then the red lines here are the primary fissures that were erupting the lava. And so you can see that flow field extending out across the roadway near the berm by the power plant in the Blue Lagoon. But it's actually gone quite a bit beyond that. In fact, if we come over here to one of the news stations maps, you can see the lava extending actually over all the way over here to the parking lot, which is going to be something we'll discuss here in a second. So the parking lot area is way over here, and the lava is actually wrapped around the berm and has taken out part of the parking lot. Now, they closed off the berm here. They leave it open while the Blue Lagoon is in operation, but they close off these two segments I've drawn here in yellow at the time of the eruption. And so it's sealed off so that lava doesn't come in through that gap there. But nonetheless, the parking lot, which was left outside the protected area, lava has inundated that area, but it has not turned and gone in. Again, the berms here, it's actually gone further to the west. It's just following the topography and the slope that exists there. Okay, going back to the Met Office update. Seismic activity decreased shortly after the eruption began, and since then there's only been a few earthquakes. Deformation measured in the first hours, but little deformation is now measured. Yeah, so there's, what we're going to see is deflation. I'll show you that here in a second. This is a map just showing the winds. The winds are still out of the northerly direction, but there is some of the gas and there is some tephra actually going into the Grindavik area. So even though they've let people back in, they evacuated last night, but they've let residents back in, not the public back in, according to Amanda Joe, who sent me a lot of this information. So a big shout out and thanks as always to her. Let's look at that earthquake data real quick. So this looks at the last day of earthquakes. And so you'll see, most of these quakes are related to the beginning of the eruption. So you can see, if I can get this zoom just right, there we go. Grindavik down here, power plant Blue Lagoon in this area. You can see that strong clustering of quakes defining more or less the eruptive fissure in this area, again, between these two hills here. And so we have quakes, some of which were up to about magnitude 2 or so, but mostly in the smaller range. What was interesting about this eruption was there was very little earthquake activity preceding it, and then a little flurry of earthquakes came in as that magma was pushing its way to the surface and breaking rock, and then the eruption began. But it wasn't a buildup of earthquake activity like we'd seen with some of the other eruptions. And our good friend Bruce Gardner has already put together some graphs that are very instructive that kind of show this pattern. So this is total number of earthquakes. And this goes all the way back to last year. So this starts with October of 2023 on the far left end. Let me get myself out of the way here. And then goes all the way up till basically yesterday, just above my head here on the far right corner. So you can see all these earthquakes coming in late October and November, early November of last year. That was actually the magma breaking through rock, creating space for itself, forming the dike, this primary conduit that led to all the eruptions. And then the earthquakes die down, a few spikes in here. One spike right here, this is the December 18th eruption. So there's an eruption that takes place here with that spike. This big spike here is the January 14th eruption. That was further south along the Sunnakur trend. And so that's a high spike in earthquake activity as more magma pushed to the south, broke rock open, created space. And then all these other spikes here, again, are eruptions. So there's a February 8th eruption. The March 2nd intrusion did not result in an eruption, but magma did move through the subsurface. Then the March, this 16th, I believe, eruption here. The May 29th eruption. You can see how quiet it was through most of the summer. And then the August 22nd eruption here. And then notice how quiet it gets again. And then that tiny little spike at the far end, that's all the earthquakes that we had preceding this eruption that began yesterday. So interestingly, if you look at this in cumulative, we've got overall, it's not perfect, but definitely a trend of decreasing earthquakes with each successive eruption, more or less. There's some anomalies to that, but interestingly, these earthquakes aren't happening as frequently, presumably because those pathways are established, the magma's already there, and there's no need to break the rock. The magma can escape quite easily. Here's another graph that Bruce put together. This one shows the area from, now we're going from August of this year to yesterday. So this is just looking at the far right side of that previous graph I showed you. Again, buildup of earthquakes culminating in the August 22nd eruption, which is this big spike here. Earthquakes drop back down, the eruption's going on. The eruption is over sometime in early September or so, and then not much earthquake activity. A little bit of a spike here on November 4th or so, and then the spike from yesterday, November 20th. So interesting earthquake data that we're seeing here, and thanks to Bruce for putting this together. And this is looking even more so. So now we're going to zoom in at the far right corner of the graph and look at that even more closely. The scale changes a little bit here. Total number of earthquakes, you can see there's days where there's just essentially none, and then boom, we get 50-ish earthquakes or so, a flurry of earthquakes, but most are pretty small. The magnitudes are up here at the top, and so negative magnitude quakes are shown in light blue. The more solid blue is 0 to 1, and 1 to 2 is shown in green. So you can see there wasn't a whole lot of large earthquakes associated with this eruption event, and then everything kind of dies down a little bit there. And then now he's just looking at it really at a granular level, looking at hours, right? So this is hour by hour. These are in, I guess, 5-minute increments, total number of earthquakes. So one earthquake at, 10:15, 10:20, 10:25, 10:30, all kind of ramping up till we finally get to the eruption, which was about right here, 11:15 last night. And again, very small magnitude quakes. Everything's below a magnitude 2 here. So thanks for Bruce for that earthquake analysis. That really is interesting to look at, and something I'll probably circle back to and look at some more. If we look at the GPS data, it's pretty much what you'd expect to see. If we go to the Svartsengi station, we see the uplift that was occurring over the past few weeks or months, I suppose. And then there's your one data point from deflation, right? The eruption begins, magma is leaving the subsurface, going out onto the surface, and so that causes the whole thing to contract a little bit or sink, and so there's a downward movement of the GPS station. So that shows up pretty nicely there, and the other stations are showing that as well, that down drop there. And we should see, it'll be interesting to see, how far down does that drop as this eruption continues? Do we get back down to that same level, or is it something else in between? So now we've kind of looked at some of the science. I'll run you through some of the more news kind of events that are going on in Iceland that Amanda Jo was able to capture for me. So let's see, we've got here, lots of articles about the Blue Lagoon, some really dramatic footage and pictures. Here's the sign to the Blue Lagoon being covered by lava, some lava there and just being incinerated. We have a real dramatic photo here, aerial view, drone shot of lava going into the parking lot like we talked about. Here's one of the excavators kind of building up that berm. This is apparently this little building that did get destroyed was more of like a storage bin for guests' suitcases and other supplies or items. And so and it was sitting out in the parking lot. So that, of course, was destroyed by the lava as well. Here's a nice little video. See if we can watch this of the lava actually in. So here's the berm over here along the right edge. You can see the lava flow pouring across the parking lot. There's a view to the west. You can see the lava wrapping around. Let's go back to that one real quick. That was kind of a nice view. Pause it. Oh, let's try again. There we go. So you can see the berm here. Here's the parking lot, and lava started spilling around the edge of the berm, and then it goes right into the parking lot. There's that structure that ended up getting destroyed. But once it kind of gets through the parking lot, it kind of continues this way. It doesn't continue wrapping around the berm. This is apparently the downhill direction for that lava to follow. So these were videos from earlier today that are out there on Icelandic news sources. And I'll try to put most of these, if I can, on the in the video description if you want to check these out on your own. Yeah, entire car park covered in lava. More of these sort of dramatic photos coming out here. Here is a photo that someone posted on Facebook. It's a nice shot that shows looking back to the east, aerial view of the lava flow coming across the parking lot. I'm sure by this point the parking lot's pretty much all been covered. And then you have the berm or the defensive wall right here, the buildings, the actual hotel, restaurant, resort part of the Blue Lagoon, and then of course the actual water pools themselves with the power plant in the background. And then the eruptive vent is just over, this is Silingarfelt, this hill here. It's just to the left of that. So nice image there. Yeah, more of the same, but just different images from drones and such, showing the lava rolling through the parking lot. There it is, coming up against the structure. A few minutes later, kind of just incinerating that structure. So lots of good footage on many fronts there. This was kind of fun here. This was someone put together a time lapse from one of the webcams of, there was a power line. I mentioned the power lines, some of the power lines had been destroyed or compromised. And this actually shows it kind of nicely in this time lapse. If you watch this power line here, it's actually in the lava and actually kind of just falls back. It looks like it's sort of leaning down as it gets burnt at the base there. It just kind of leans in the ground. There's a little bit of smoke coming up as it really starts catching on fire. So this is one of the power lines that was actually taken out by the lava. This is looking to the northwest, I suppose. There's the defensive berm there. I think this is from Thjorper, the hill just north of Godindavik, and there's the lava flow wrapping around. So the Blue Lagoon parking lot would be further to the left there in that view. Nice little view there. And then finally, this is kind of interesting here. Amanda Jo had a friend report that in Godindavik there was some Pele's hair that was sprinkled all over the ground in Godindavik. And so remember we had those winds out of the northeast yesterday blowing the gas and the fine tephra, the finest material that was being fountained by that lava flow. That lava, as it gets thrown up into the air, can be stretched apart and pulled into little fibers, and then it can be blown with the wind, downwind, and then fall down out of the sky. So these are just these little things called Pele's hairs, these thin little fibers of just kind of spun volcanic glass that are common in these types of eruptions, these types of fissure eruptions. So thanks to Amanda Jo for getting a picture of that. Pretty interesting. I think that's all I have for you on this update so far. So we'll continue to monitor this. I will be leaving. We're going to try to do another drone flight tomorrow on Friday with Johan and Nature Eye, and probably piggyback that into an update or some sort of question and answer thing as well. And then moving forward, we'll just see how long this eruption continues for. Good chance that it might go on for a few days at this sort of level, or even kind of waning a little bit. It's obviously getting closer to night there, so you can kind of see things getting a little bit darker. Yeah, but we'll just kind of keep you abreast of developments there as best we can moving forward. And yeah, that'll do it for today. Thanks for joining me on this update. Thanks for your support of the channel and your viewership, and we'll see you next time. Take care, friends.